The government can't tell the truth about almost anything to do with electricity.
This is, I think, the problem that we have with our electricity system. It's been built now as a cash cow for private interests, as opposed to, an essential service.
We have a lot at stake, and there's a lot of people that are hurting, and it's time to do something about it.
My hydro bill is more than my pension. We can't afford the living expenses, so we're going to have to sell our home. And shame on you, Kathleen Wynne.
From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, the Zoomer with Libby Znaimer.
Hello and welcome to the Zoomer. Today we tackle a topic that hits all of us in the pocketbook, skyrocketing hydro rates. Some of the hardest hit are Zoomers, older people on fixed incomes, people who are being forced to cut down on groceries and medicine in order to pay their hydro bills. Take a listen to Margaret, an octogenarian from Scarborough, who called into my radio show, Fight Back with Libby Znaimer, on AM 740 Zoomer Radio.
And I'd like to know what this regularity is. I know what delivery is, but if you put regularity, delivery, and HST, it cost me more than the hydro did. What in the name of God is going on with the people that are filling their pockets with money instead of being honest with us?
We also went to the streets to get reaction.
I'm very, very upset about the fact that seniors are saying they have to choose between groceries and heating. What has that come to?
Oh my God, it's too much. Everything is so expensive. You cannot buy anything. It's not worth it.
The hydro affects me because my landlord, my property management takes care of that. So if the rates go up, my rent goes up.
I was paying more for the delivery charge than just the hydro itself. We really watch our consumption. We've changed all our bulbs, and our hydro is still like $150 a month. So it's actually quite ridiculous.
The rising cost of hydro is making it difficult for me. I'm an ODSP recipient, so I'm on social assistance. And it's tough. Every nickel counts, you know?
It's crazy. It's crazy. Just crazy. I'm not prepared for it.
So how did we get here? It's complicated, so we turned to an economics professor, Marvin Ryder, to break it all down.
Thank you, Libby. Well, this story actually goes back into the 1990s, and the Mike Harris government, they took a look at the infrastructure that we had in this province and said we need to grow the capacity to generate electricity, but they didn't want to pay for it. They wanted to get the private sector involved. So how do you get the private sector involved? Well, they broke up Ontario Hydro into 4 companies, a distribution company, a power generating company, etc., and they allowed people to do this at a bit of a profit, where Ontario Hydro just had to break even. Then we move into 2003. Dalton McGuinty is elected as the leader of the Liberals. A new government comes in. He double-checks the Conservatives' numbers, and in 2005, then Energy Minister Dwight Duncan gets a report that says 80% of the electricity infrastructure in Ontario has to be replaced. Again, the government didn't have the money to do this. They wanted the private sector to do this, so we see generating capacity, what have you, built there. Then we get to 2007. 2007, Dalton McGuinty says, let's become a green energy province. Let's try to get a technology lead here. Let's get out and start doing some things with wind and solar power. And also at the same time, let's get rid of the second cheapest way of generating electricity, that's coal, and be better for the environment. Now, those 3 things on their own aren't necessarily a problem if our demand for electricity continue to rise. But now, today, 2016 conservation comes about. We actually use less energy today in 2017 than we did in 2005. Even in the year 2000, our energy use has dropped about 10%. All of this was assuming that it was going to grow by 30%. What's the problem? Well, to get these people to take these risk back here, we had to do fixed price contracts. We had to guarantee them a price for electricity over a 20-year period. Today, that's electricity we don't need. And so on my bill, not only am I billed for the electricity I use, but the electricity the system has been generating. And that's why, generally speaking, our rates since 2006 have gone up 100%.
Okay, let's head back to the table and see if the rest of the panel agrees with your analysis and has anything to add. Tom, let's start with you.
Yeah, I solidly agree. The Green Energy Act came in 2009, Ontario's electricity prices in 2003 had been frozen by the previous Liberal Conservative government. There was a bit of a bump, and then prices stayed fairly stable through to 2009. Since 2009, that's when the steady increase has really taken off. So that that's corresponded to about 8% per year for residential rates since that time period. And I mean, we're in a situation now where particularly low-income consumers, but also electricity-intensive employers are really having a big problem because the power cost thing has been completely transformed.
Andrea, what has the government done to make this even worse?
Well, look, what the government's doing is continuing on a path that has proven to be not helpful for the people of Ontario. They're continuing to go to the private sector. They're selling off Hydro One, which again is only going to make it even more expensive as they continue to sell off that public utility. And as Marvin said, this started with the Conservatives, with the deregulation and privatization on the generation side. Now we're doing that on the transmission side with the sell-off of Hydro One. The government has learned nothing from the mistakes that were made by the Conservatives and then furthered by the Liberals with inviting in the private sector. It used to be that, like Manitoba and Quebec, and in fact BC and New Brunswick, where public power exists, Ontario had an energy system that fueled our economy, that fueled the nation's economy, right? People could afford their bills. Businesses were booming. Not so anymore. People can't afford their bills. And the single biggest factor is the privatization in our system because they've had to build in the profit that is made by the private sector companies, as well as Marvin mentioned, these fixed price contracts, which is what enabled these companies to get into the game. And now we're paying through the nose. And I hear from folks like you do, Libby, every single day, both on the business side, small business, big business, chambers of commerce, as well as senior citizens, young families. Everyone's in the same boat, and people should be able to build a good life here in this province, and folks are really worried that that not only is that not happening now, but what's going to happen to the next generation.
Wanda, you hear from a lot of people about this too. That's why there's a CARP campaign.
We do. In fact, many of our members are fairly well off financially, but they're particularly concerned about the lowest income seniors who are having to make these horrific choices, the heat or eat choice. And so the number one priority for our CARP members is to reduce rates for those who can least afford it. The other thing that we hear over and over is that the structure of rates is really punitive to our members. You're probably aware of the peak pricing that happens during the day. Well, many seniors are home during the day. They're not at their offices or otherwise out, so they are being unfairly penalized, which seems very unfair given that we know there's extra capacity in the system.
Well, okay, so let's get to that. And Jack, we haven't heard from you. It boggles the mind that Ontario pays other jurisdictions to take our power.
Well, Libby, the main reason our electricity rates have risen is because we are so dependent on high-cost nuclear power. We get 60% of our electricity from nuclear power. It's a very high-cost source of power. Ontario Power Generation's rates have risen about 60% since 2002, and now they're seeking to raise them, their price of nuclear power by an additional 180%. To pay for the extension of the high-cost Pickering nuclear station and to rebuild the Darlington nuclear station. That's the main cause why our rates are so high. And also, nuclear is very inflexible. And so the nuclear power plants can't be ramped down when we have a surplus capacity. So Pickering continues to operate at night and on weekends, and we export the power to the United States at a loss.
Tom, you had something to say about that.
Yeah, this story about nuclear, Ontario gets its generation supply from hydroelectric, from nuclear, from gas, from renewables. And the average price, average cost of those different fuel elements are reported every half-yearly by the Ontario Energy Board, and it's very easy to look them up. Of the different sources of electricity supply by technology, nuclear is the second cheapest. It's much cheaper than the average cost for the commodity portion of the bill. So nuclear costs, although they're rising, they are still keeping the average cost down by averaging down because they're lower cost than the other sources. Now, that's not to say the future cost of nuclear is guaranteed to be as inexpensive as it is today, but it's incorrect to claim that Ontario's rising cost of power has been attributable to nuclear. That's not true.
One of the problems with electricity is it's not like we're building cars that we can stockpile the excess and then draw on it when we need it. Electrons are expendable. They disappear. So what happens is when we don't need the electricity, getting some money for it is better than no money at all. At least it's another revenue stream that brings the cost down. If we weren't getting that money, it would actually be more on your bill to pay for the extra electricity. We just need to find a way to, as you said, if we could balance the system, if we could only produce the electron when we needed it, and if we don't need it, don't produce, but we have so much of it that's fixed and coming out all the time, selling it and getting some revenue is better than letting it go to waste.
Hold on though, but except that they're selling it on the spot market on a whim, instead of having long-term contracts with our customers that we know we have for our excess power. This is what other jurisdictions do. This is what Manitoba does. Why hasn't the province of Ontario, done the right thing by us, by the ratepayers, and actually make sure that they are getting a better price for our power? They've simply let that one go by.
Okay, well, I see there's plenty of controversy here, and we have a lot more coming up. Firstly, do you understand your hydro bill? You probably aren't meant to. We'll translate the jargon and crunch the numbers when we come back.
My hydro bill is more than my pension. And this is the medication that I'm supposed to be taking, and I can't afford some of them.
What does the doctor say?
He says if you don't take your medication, you're gonna die. So I guess I'm gonna die.
Welcome back. Now we're trying to make sense of some of those bills. It's hard enough to get a handle on the usage rates and delivery charges, but it's even worse if you were one of those people who signed a contract after an independent retailer knocked on your door. The lower price they offered might have been misleading. Here's the thing. The price from the power company includes something called the global adjustment, and that is more than the cost of the commodity. But the price from an independent retailer does not include that so-called adjustment. It's on top of it. Have a look at how that's affecting Allison Lakey from Burlington.
Here is our first contestant. He is hungry. He is ill. He has to make a crucial decision. He has to decide food or medicine.
As you can see in that CARP commercial, many Canadians across the country have difficult decisions to make every day when it comes to making ends meet. And here in Ontario, one of the biggest challenges facing seniors are the rising hydro bills, where in the past 10 years, the average price of electricity has doubled.
My pension that I should be getting by the end of this month would be $347.12.
The average bill for you is how much?
Approximately $400.
So your hydro bill costs more than your pension?
My hydro bill is more than my pension. This is the letter that I wrote to Premier Wynne. I have had to decide to pay my bills, hydro and gas, or cut down on a food intake. Also, many times I have to decide on replenishing my medication or not. As of today, I need more insulin. Your help will be greatly appreciated.
And what's been the response from Premier Wynne?
I have received no response as yet.
Nothing?
Nothing. We have cut down on our meals that we have. I would make a pot of soup that would last for 2 days. We can't afford the living expenses, so we're going to have to sell our home. There is no way that anybody can grow old gracefully anymore. Not with a hydro bill this high. There is no way that anybody can do that. And shame on you, Kathleen Wynne. Shame on you.
The situation today, seniors may just as well lie down and die.
I have had cancer 3 times, and this is the medication that I'm supposed to be taking, and I can't afford some of them. I can't afford to buy them all.
Have you talked to your doctor about this?
Yes.
What does the doctor say?
He says if you don't take your medication, you're going to die. So I guess I'm gonna die.
To learn more about this issue and how you can help make a difference, visit carp.ca/hydro and sign their petition for hydro relief as part of their Heat or Eat campaign. Here in Burlington, I'm Darren Maharaj for Zoomer News.
Okay, so Tom, you've seen this bill. Did they just get taken in by an independent retailer?
Well, we don't know what was said at the door, but what we can see is that the average cost of power that this customer is paying is worse than what customers that have not signed retailer contracts would have paid. The issue, as you point out, relates to global adjustment. In an ordinary household electricity bill, your global adjustment charge is rolled into the time of use rates charge. You can't see it, but it's hiding in there. Now, when a retailer comes to the customer's door and says, oh, we have an offering and our commodity charge is lower than the commodity charge you're being paid on your bill, what's often missing from that sales pitch is the explanation that if you sign with a retailer, the global adjustment charge is going to be separately charged for you, whereas now it's rolled in. So in this case, this customer gets to see what the global adjustment charge is. She didn't know it was there in all likelihood before she signed the retailer contract. It arrived. It looks like the global adjustment charge arrived on her bill because of something that the real retailer had done. It's actually the case that she had been paying it before and she's still stuck with it no matter how she gets her power.
And so this is why we've tried to ban those door-to-door energy marketers. We've had private members' bills in the legislature many times because lots of times these folks put really high pressure tactics on people and try to convince them that they're going to save all kinds of money at the doorstep, and people want a good deal, especially people who are having a hard time making ends meet.
And a lot of seniors
we've tried to get those banned.
Vulnerable.
CARP, too, has been fighting very much for control of door-to-door sales. Many times they should really be called door-to-door scams, not just in the energy industry, but in fact many ways where more vulnerable residents are preyed upon.
Because we don't really have transparency in the bill, I prefer not to think of them as scam artists, but they put forward a line of reasoning that you don't have an ability to check. You can't compare what they're saying to the bill in front of you because you don't know what it's all in there. So it sounds good. This is why you sign on. They know it sounds good because we didn't get the transparency we wanted.
Okay. When we come back, we'll discuss what the government should be doing to fix this. Stay tuned.
This is, I think, the problem that we have with our electricity system. It's been built now as a cash cow for private interests as opposed to, an essential service.
Welcome back. CARP has recently launched its Heat or Eat campaign, a province-wide initiative to lobby the government to restore sanity to hydro rates. Why don't we begin with you, Wanda?
Thanks so much, Libby. We hear from so many of our members that this is an issue. If this is an issue to you, it's really important for you to add your voice to this campaign. Voices, squeaky wheels get the grease. Our website is carp.ca/hydro. Go to the hydro campaign, put your name on our petition. Let's make sure the government hears us. We need at least a 25% reduction in rates. Let's make that happen.
Okay, and Gwen, tell me about your campaign in Barrie.
Well, we thought this was important, so we started basically last October putting this together. It has escalated quite a bit since then, and of course there was a lot of interest by politicians. But we've tried to make this into giving a history and education so that people, when they complain, they understand what they're complaining about. I don't know what I don't know, and most of us don't. So we're calling it Hydro Explained, and we have 4 speakers, including Tom. And I hope it will go well. I really do. We have 225 people coming out, and I think it's important for us to understand what it's all about.
Wanda wants a 25% reduction. If you get into power. Can you give her that in your first 4 years?
Well, I can tell you it'll be job number one. It has to be job number one. This is the biggest issue that people are concerned about. And so, yes, I guess what I want to say is New Democrats would do everything we can to turn the system around and make it one that once again meets the needs of our businesses and our people.
Okay, Wanda, so what is acceptable to you?
Well, I think one of the big things we need, besides the overall rate reduction, I think the two critical pieces. One is at least to reduce the rates to our poorest income seniors. Nobody should having to choose between heating or eating. And secondly, to address the real disparity between peak time and other rates for seniors living at home during the day. Some of the rates they pay during that time are really verging on extortionate.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right, and you know, it's really a sad day when I think most people in Ontario would have said that they support, for example, things like renewable energy, and they support the idea of doing what we should be doing when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions and our need to deal with the climate change issue. But what we now have in Ontario is neighbor pitted against neighbor, community against community, farmer against farmer. And we've seen other jurisdictions that have brought these kinds of initiatives forward that have done exactly what you talk about, Wanda.
How would you do it?
A rebate program. We would have a fairness program that would ensure that those people that are having the most difficulty paying the bill, or those people who are disadvantaged economically, but also geographically, would be able to have their pain, if you will, mitigated by the very system that's been put in place.
Is that something that would be sustainable? It's basically subsidies for certain people?
One of the difficulties is attempting to turn the power system into a social welfare agency gives the power system a job that it's really not fit for.
But if we can turn it into a profit cow for a private industry, why can't we turn it into something that actually meets the needs of people and business? I mean, this is, I think, the problem that we have with our electricity system. It's been built now as a cash cow for private interests, as opposed to, an essential service that people and businesses and industry need here in this province.
Yeah, and that's right. And by doing energy conservation programs, home energy retrofit programs, we can reduce bills for homeowners and avoid the need for new high-cost nuclear power plants, and that can lower everyone's rates and bills.
The reduction in demand is one of the reasons rates are going up.
No, it's not, Tom. The reason rates are going up is because we're heavily dependent on high-cost nuclear power. We've got surplus generating stations we don't need. Now, some people
do you agree with that?
Well, I was going to say, this is why we started with the 8% taking the provincial sales tax off. That was relatively easy to do. There's nothing wrong with what Wanda's talking about, except now we're going to means test. So we're going to have to determine what is a below average income person or who's disadvantaged. We're going to have to draw some lines, and you know, the minute you draw lines, there'll be people just over the line who should be getting a subsidy and somebody just under the line who shouldn't get the subsidy, or if you put geography, why is North Bay getting the subsidy and not, you know, Temiskaming or something like this?
I love the way that BC does it, where they have a sort of a low income threshold so that everybody pays it's kind of like how our tax rates work. So everybody pays a low rate on the first amount of income, and then you start to pay higher rates the more that you have. So, you know, I don't think anyone
progressive tax.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's arguing that if you're, living in a 15-bedroom mansion, that your hydro bills should be expensive. So if we started with a low rate for everybody's first, X number of kilowatt hours, and then once it got beyond that, we started to increase the rates, that might be.
So what you're saying is move away from time of use, peak, mid-peak, off-peak,
yes,
and say that your first, I'll make up a number here, 500 kilowatt hours is at this low rate, and then if I'm a low consumer, I won't pay any more, but the big consumer who goes past it pays more.
That sounds great to me.
And if I could tweak that a little bit, I would try to set up two different rates, one for people that had electrical heating and one for those who didn't, because otherwise I think we have a disparity. But I think that would go a long way to helping.
Okay, a lot to think about. So when we come back, how to make your home more energy efficient. Stay tuned.
Wi-Fi thermostats, they let you control your thermostat via an app on your smartphone or tablet. So even if you're not at home, you can make adjustments remotely.
Welcome back. Making your home more energy efficient is a good way to help lower your monthly bills. First, you'll need an in-home energy audit to figure out what upgrades are necessary. Have a look.
Look how it flutters. I'm not even very close to the opening.
So there's lots of air.
Air coming through coming in from the crawl space.
Mm-hmm. So that needs insulation and
air sealing.
Air sealing.
Yeah, air sealing. We are trying to identify areas in the house where we can reduce the amount of gas consumption. If there's potential for insulation to be added to walls, be it main walls or basement walls or even attic insulation, we would recommend that to the homeowner. But you see this little plastic here, that's a vapor barrier.
Yeah.
It's a very thick grade plastic that's laid on top of the insulation in the wall. So, at some point in the past, the house may have been gutted.
And then they insulated the wall.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what happens with this test in terms of draft areas, because I think there's areas to improve in the house, and the one place I think we can definitely improve is the basement.
This is a brick foundation. As you can tell, it's the bricks. So we look at the house itself, what type of insulation it is. We look at the mechanicals, basically your hot water heater, your furnaces, and see how efficient it is. This type of tank typically runs around 57 to 58% efficiency. Okay. The tankless is 90% and up.
Wow.
It's a big difference.
If you have fuel savings of 15 to 24%, you'll receive $1,000. For fuel savings between 25 and 49%, you'll get $1,600. And for fuel savings of 50% or more, receive $2,100.
It's a fairly old window.
So not very efficient?
Not very efficient. Newer windows would be Energy Star rated. They would have one complete sealed unit with two glazings together.
Okay.
And which would have argon and krypton gas.
So this is a potential place to improve?
To improve, correct.
Okay. I didn't know about the amount of insulation in the walls. I didn't realize that windows lose a lot more energy than walls do. I like lots of light. I assumed that windows and skylights added beauty and design elements, but I didn't realize that they also took away efficiencies from a home.
The good news is, if you're in the market to make your home greener, we have the technology, and some of these things are simple and inexpensive. I'm here with tech expert Mark Saltzman.
Hi.
Hi. Show and tell, please.
Sure, of course. We all want to save money on our hydro bills, our power bills, and with some smart aftermarket solutions, you can really make a big difference. So let's start off with smart lighting. What I brought here from Philips are regular LED bulbs that you would replace with your fluorescent, your incandescent lights, and they come in all shapes and sizes and wattages. So of course, whether it's a regular bulb like this, pot lights, big floodlights, all shapes and sizes, they sip rather than gulp electricity. That's the point. In fact, up to 90% energy savings on these things. So, for example, these can go about 10.5 watts instead of a 60-watt equivalent. It gives you that same luminescence that you would expect. The second advantage is longevity. These can last over 20 years. Some of these lights, including ones from Philips, they're called the Hue brand of Philips LED lights. They are smart bulbs, so that means they can connect to your Wi-Fi network. You can control them with an app, set schedules and timers, like come on at a certain time of the day or day of the week, change the colors on demand. But they do range in prices. These start at about $6 a bulb, which is of course more expensive than a regular bulb. But when you add in what it's going to cost you on your hydro bills and the longevity, they pay for themselves after a short while. Number two, Wi-Fi thermostats. And there is no shortage of these on the market. My favorite is a Toronto company called ecobee, and that's the name of the product as well. This is the ecobee 3 and the ecobee 3 Lite. They're both similar. So what they do is basically two things. One is that they let you control your thermostat via an app on your smartphone or tablet. So even if you're not at home, you can make adjustments remotely. The second thing that the ecobee 3 does is that it has room detection. So there are sensors, as you can see on the box here. You get one with it, but you can add more per room. So it will detect occupancy. If you're not at home all day, there's no reason why your air conditioner has to be cranked all day in a hot summer, unless you have pets, of course. So it detects people and pets. When it doesn't detect anything, it automatically heats and cools the home. Ecobee says that on average, you're saving 23% on your heating and cooling bills annually. And I've played around with these for a couple of years. You definitely see a difference. So Wi-Fi thermostats, and you don't need to be tech savvy to use them. You can buy them also, not even in an electronics store. You can go into a home improvement store and buy these off the shelf now. So I really like the Ecobee stuff. Number 3, smart switches and power strips. So this is when you plug your electronics into the wall, when this is a single one here for only $20-odd, and then this is a little bit more for a full strip, is that you can, with an app or with a button that you can have somewhere else in the room, cut off the power 100%. So there's something that we pay a lot for in Canada, or even around the world. It's called vampire power or phantom power. This is when your devices are plugged into the wall, and even though they're not turned on, they still consume electricity. Some are bigger culprits than others, some appliances that they are always on and they're running in the background. Others are more efficient. You want to look for the Energy Star sticker and things like that. But this is a 0-watt kill switch. So if you don't need that TV on when you're in Florida for a week, then you can have it with consuming no power at all without having to unplug it out of the wall. The one product I didn't bring with me, but we have video for, is a new breed of TVs called OLED TVs, organic light emitting diode-based TVs. And this is from LG, what we're looking at here. Others are coming on board as well. But an OLED TV, not only are they so thin because no backlighting is required, each pixel or dot that makes up the image is its own light source. It's a self-illuminating television. But that also means you're going to see a difference on your hydro bills or your electricity bills because it doesn't consume as much power. Again, they sip rather than gulping electricity. You do pay a premium for any new technology, let's face it, and OLED is no exception. These TVs start at $29.99, so it is more expensive than traditional TVs. The picture quality is outstanding, so if you're a movie fanatic, then there's a lot of buzz around OLED, and for good reason. But prices will come down over time as more competitors get in the market and they refine the manufacturing process, but you definitely will see that they don't consume as much power, so they're very energy efficient.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. A lot to think about.
Thank you.
And there's a lot more to come. Stay tuned.
Glad to be here, panel. My name is Molly Malcolm, and you're looking at the face of a senior who is struggling.
Welcome back. Let's hear from our audience now. Our first question goes to Molly.
Glad to be here, panel. My name is Molly Malcolm, and you're looking at the face of a senior who is struggling. The part of my hydro bill I can understand is that there are so many costs there, more than the ones that I can control. I'd also like to know from Andrea, because I'm very pleased she's going to feel something should be done. What are you going to do, please?
Okay, so straight up, first and foremost, we would stop any further sell-off of Hydro One. We would do everything we can to bring the electricity system back into an operating system that operates in the best interests of people, in a way that is affordable, in a way that is responsible in terms of our environmental responsibilities, and in a way that that meets people's needs so that it's reliable. We would look at all of those fixed price contracts that have been signed by the Premier with the various companies and the previous Conservative government before that, and see whether there's some value we could get out of it. We would stop selling, just dumping the electricity that's excess on the spot market, and put together a more lucrative way of dealing with that excess energy so that the people of Ontario can have the benefit of that. We would look at the Ontario Energy Board, which should be acting in the interests of ratepayers, but oftentimes is approving these companies to increase the bills or increase their charges to undertake projects that they don't even actually ever do. This is something the Auditor General has identified. But as I said earlier, it's job number one from our perspective. Should we form government in 2018, this is the most important thing that we have to deal with.
I and my budget will be counting the days until you achieve what you say you plan to do.
I think we have another question from Sandra.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandra. I'm also from Barrie, and I would like a quick explanation of why the government is selling our excess power, electricity, and virtually giving it away to locations outside of Ontario. Thanks.
Irrespective of how we manage this issue of surplus power and whether we can do a better job contracting or not, which I'm skeptical about, the fact that Ontario is throwing away such vast amounts of power, increasing every year at such miserable prices, it's a symptom of profound mismanagement of the system. Irrespective of how we get out of it, we have to recognize Ontario's power system is really very, very messed up. It's messed up at an institutional level. Customers are not being given a straight bill of goods on their power bills. The government can't tell the truth about almost anything to do with electricity. So, I mean, the scale and scope of what it would take to get our power system onto a stable footing is very substantial. I think one of the key ingredients to restoring some kind of sense to this is to get rid of the Green Energy Act. It's really the core of what has rotted the system from the inside out.
See, I disagree with that.
That's totally well, you voted for it.
No,
I know you disagree with it, but it really
is the way that the Liberals
implemented where we are at now.
The way that the Liberals implemented that legislation. I would agree with you there. I don't think it's the act itself. Meant to look at bringing new renewables into the mix, but that but bringing renewable energy into the mix should have been done in the interests of communities. Municipal partnerships, First Nations, farm co-ops. Instead, the government did what they've been doing for the last 20 years, and they just signed it all off to the private sector so that they could make tons of profits on it.
First thing we got to do is we got to restore the institutional structure of the power system. We've got to get rid of the bill that you voted for.
I think that it goes way beyond.
I mean, if we really want to reduce bills, we've got to close the Pickering nuclear station. That is the biggest single thing to give a big bill reduction.
Well, I mean, you took the view that Ontario could get rid of its coal plants at the cost of a cup of coffee and a donut. It turns out that getting rid of the coal plants costs Ontario ratepayers about $5 billion a year.
Tom, the government didn't take our advice. If they had phased out coal the way we advocated, it would have cost the cost of $2 a month. But what they did was they restarted 5 nuclear reactors at a very high cost. And it's because of their decision to go with nuclear, that's the main reason why rates went up. The green energy that you hate so much, Tom, it only provides us with 6% of our electricity.
And about 30% of our cost.
It can't be the major source of our rate increases. The major source of our rate increases is due to nuclear that provides us with 60% of our power. It just doesn't make sense.
Check the math.
Okay. When we come back, we'll have final thoughts from our panelists. Stay tuned.
People cannot afford their electricity bills, and they need to be turned around. We need to put people and businesses back at the center of our electricity system. People deserve a government that's going to really focus on that. They certainly didn't vote for what they have now.
Welcome back. Let's go around the table and hear some final thoughts from our panelists, starting with Tom.
Well, one thing that Jack and I will agree on is that if Ontario is to do something about controlling electricity costs, we have to get at the fundamental root causes of what's driving up power cost. We may have a disagreement about what those constituent parts are, but in the game of power costs, there's the total amount of money that has to be collected, and then there's the reallocation amongst the customer groups. Reallocation doesn't get us very far. We really need to go after root causes.
Okay, Gwen.
Well, Canadians are nice. It's time to stop being nice. We have a lot at stake, and there's a lot of people that are hurting, and it's time to do something about it.
Yeah, I wish I could be more positive. I think we're stuck in this mess. I think buckle up, we're in for a bumpy ride, probably for another 10 years. Once those contracts start to expire in 2025, 26, I think we get degrees of freedom back that are going to allow us to do it. Otherwise, it's Band-Aids. It'll be little one-off programs here and there for various organizations. But the basic problems, the problems we try to identify in the structure, I'm afraid they're with us for another decade.
We have problems, I agree with that, but some of them just cannot be borne. Kathleen Wynne has said that as we sit here today, she's made a promise that she will do something, but we haven't seen any concrete action. What I know is that when people raise their voices together collectively, we can be heard. carp.ca/hydro, join our campaign. We need to do at least a few things so that people are not having to choose between heating and eating.
Premier Wynne can reduce our electricity bills by $1 billion a year by closing the Pickering nuclear station when its license expires in 2018. If you would like to see Pickering closed, please sign our petition at close-pickering.ca. Thank you.
From my perspective, it's about doing every single thing we possibly can do. Some of those are short-term measures, some of those are medium-term, some of them, as Marvin said, are longer-term. But the bottom line is, I agree with Wanda, people cannot afford their electricity bills, and they need to be turned around. We need to put people and businesses back at the center of our electricity system, and some of that, as I said, can be achieved in the short term, much of it in the medium and longer term, but people deserve a government that's going to really focus on that. They certainly didn't vote for what they have now.
Okay, the bottom line, the message to our governments has to be clear. If they don't change the situation, we will change them. Heat or eat is a choice no one should have to make. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Thanks to our panel. Now it's time to zoom out.
Premier, why you so out of touch? Your policies are destroying and taking everything from us. My hydro bill is running high as my rent, so high that last year it literally sunk me in debt. Now they're coming to collect, and you taxing my check. The hydro bill comes in and they snatching all the rest. Just scum. You don't care about the people you govern, you sit comfortable. While most people here struggle, you corrupt. You don't know what it's like to decide whether to get food for your family or keep on the lights. You're killing us. -20, I can't afford the heat. Wearing layers covered up with my blankets and the sheets just to keep warm. Max the credit card to survive so I could keep up with your hydro. Now tell me why I'm in debt now, and why they calling me because of it. Rates keep climbing and we can see that you loving it. Pockets stay lined at the expense of the people. When I look into your eyes, I see extensive evil. There's people out here going under every day while you smiling for the cameras and you brush it all away like it doesn't matter. Well, it matters to me and every other family who has become a casualty. They losing everything, businesses closing up shop, cause their profits get chopped by your rates and more jobs would disintegrate. You're lucky they ain't bailed yet. How you haven't come to terms with the fact that you failed yet? 2016, over $7,000, how can that be fair?